welcome to another edition of the Paranormal Zone. I'm your co-host, Tom Spitalere, and Bob's back with us. We're very excited to have him back. The Paranormal Zone is set up to look at different views of UFOs, UAVs, Bigfoot, ghosts, anything that goes bump into the night. And we listen to what everybody, wants to hear. Not hear, but wants to tell us what they've researched, because everybody researches differently, and good researchers put a lot of time into this stuff. So if you ever want to come on, Bob, give them the email address so they can get a hold of us, so they can come on, and then we'll start today's show.
Yeah, sure. You can email Paranormal, PARANORMALNH at yahoo.com. Just give me a storyline as to what your story is or what your craft is, and we'll schedule you on a show in the future.
All righty. And today's show, we're going to do a little in-house show today, I guess. Huh, Bob?
Yeah, it's going to be fun.
We're going to talk about one of the most obscure places in the world, in my opinion. One of the most obscure places, certainly in New England and Massachusetts. And probably the most written about obscure places in the world and in Massachusetts. And we may touch on other things, too, because it's a very interesting area. Today we're going to talk about the Bridgewater Triangle. Wow. That's a mouthful, isn't it, Bob?
Yeah, it sure is. Yeah, very, very mysterious place, isn't it, huh?
It's a very mysterious place. First of all, the Bridgewater Triangle. Picture this. We could probably walk this in a half a day, Bob, you and I. You ready? Yeah. 200 square miles.
Right.
You think
Pretty big area.
You think we could walk that in a day?
I don't think so.
I don't
You
think
could.
so.
I couldn't.
Yeah. It was first coined in, well, I shouldn't say it was first coined in 1978 in Lauren Coleman's Mysterious America. Bob, you've ever read that book? It's a very good book.
I did know, but I've heard of it, yeah.
So the Bridgewater Triangle, okay, it's shaped like a triangle, but, what's interesting about the Bridgewater Triangle is it really a triangle or not? We will see by the end of the show what you think at home. So on the towns on the outer side of the Bridgewater Triangle are Abington, Rehoboth, and Freetown.
Okay, yeah.
Those are the points. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's a pretty big area when you think about it.
Yeah, it's kind of like Weymouth, Seekonk to Dartmouth, correct? In that area there? Yeah.
Then the middle towns are Brockton, Whitman, East and West Bridgewater, Middleborough, Dighton, Berkeley, Raynham, Norton, Easton, Lakeville, Sonnet, Seekonk, and Taunton. And, of course, when you're talking about Freetown, you got East and West Freetown, too. I obviously didn't add that in there. But,
right.
You're talking a huge area, 19 towns in total.
Wow, 19, huh? Wow.
Yeah.
Now, are most of these towns, Tom, most of this area developed or undeveloped?
Parts of this area, like, yeah, okay.
Like Brockton's pretty well developed.
Brockton, Taunton, they're all very well developed out there. Brockton and Taunton, so, I mean, when you look at this, there are cities. Then you got some areas that are like Berkeley and Lakeville that are very rural still, but growing.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Lakeville is known for its cranberry bogs.
Right.
So, and really, this thing has been weird since day one. And what do I mean by day one? I don't mean all of a sudden Lauren Coleman came out with this and many other triangles in 1978. Wrong. He came out with them in 78, but some of these locations have been around since before the settlers came.
Correct.
Some of these hauntings. So one of the areas is the Hockomock Swamp, which Essex County has walked a portion of the Hockomock Swamp.
Yeah.
So this again is an Algonquin place for the spirit, for the place where the spirit dwells.
Right.
It's a small swamp, 16,950 acre swamp. It's the largest freshwater swamp in the state.
Oh, yeah. Pretty big.
Yeah. I mean, 17th century swamp was the fortress for the Wampanoag King Philip, famous King Philip War, which was all over that area of southeastern Massachusetts. We didn't see it up our way. We did see some stuff with, later on with Hannah Dustin, the 1709 massacres in Haverhill, which was all part of that war and around that war. But a lot of the blood of the early battles took place in this area.
Wow. Huh.
And the
now, Tom, they have tons of different, which I found interesting, different paranormal activity, correct? I mean, there's all kinds of...
Yeah. I mean, anywhere you go in the Bridgewater Triangle, you'll find anything and everything you want to discuss.
Yeah. So what do you contribute? I mean, usually if we, are in an area, or mostly house buildings, but you'll get, ghosts. Might get UFOs. What do you contribute all of this stuff in this one area to? I mean, why so much activity?
Well, a lot of it could be the area it's in, okay?
Yeah.
So, as I've discussed, and we've had guests on discussing this in the past, and I've done plenty of talks on this stuff, Bob, these triangles, whether it be Bridgewater, Ossipee, New Hampshire, the Ossipee Triangle in New Hampshire, or the Bennington Triangle, they have swamps that have a Native American land. So you got Native American land, you got water,
Yep.
You got ley lines that run through this swamp. In fact, some of the ley lines actually connect to the Ossipee Triangle. Ley lines are sun lines. You have human intervention. You have a large acre of land. I mean, that swamp is 16,900 acres of undeveloped land. There's some development, obviously, on the outskirts, but not in the interior. And that's a lot of, let's call it, for sake of a word, virgin land. And you don't know what was done on that land, okay? You had cults in there doing religious worships. You had satanic cult worships in there. You have had a lot of stuff going on where there's positive and negative energy constantly down there.
Okay.
And, of course, the Native Americans... one of the sites down there is Anawam Rock, and that was the area where King Philip, they captured him,
Right.
And when they captured him, and actually, Hockomock means Hobomok, Hobbomack, which is the chief of death and disease. Hobbomack was the command for the souls of the dead who now congregate in the swamp. So all the Native Americans and anything that took place, this is where their souls lie.
Right.
So when you have that,
right,
on top of everything else I've mentioned, you have UFO, you have Birdman, Bigfoot, you have everything down there.
Yeah, I even saw where they said there's been sightings of giant prehistoric type birds.
Correct. In fact, in and I didn't bring my copy with me, but in Mysterious America, there's a picture of one flying over Ben Schaefer Stadium.
Wow, really?
Well, today we know it as, what's it, Gillette now? The Patriots' home stadium. Gillette Stadium.
Gillette.
Yeah. Originally called
Gillette
Ben
Stadium.
Schaefer Stadium for the people who are not from New England.
Right. Also, one of the things I read, Tom, which I found interesting, that there has been reported sightings of panthers and bears that are not indigenous to that area.
Correct. Now, I have been out there, have never seen a panther or a bear indigenous to that area, but when you have a swamp that's 16,900 acres of land, right?
Right.
And then you take another 5,000 acre state forest of Freetown State Forest, which abuts this thing.
Right.
And then you have people who, for years, I mean, look at Benson's Animal Farm. That was mostly brought in by people who wanted exotic pets and go, oh, the monkeys are cute. Oh, wait a minute.
Right.
They grow. Uh-oh. Now we got a problem. We got to get rid of these things.
Right.
So could they survive in that swamp? There's plenty of food to survive.
Water.
Plenty of food.
Right.
Water, food.
Yeah.
Vegetation, yep.
Yeah.
Anything you need.
Another species they talk about is extremely large snakes.
Correct. And that's why I have said on many shows where we've had Bigfoot people and everything else, if you plan on going into the woods, please watch. Now, what happens with the large snakes are, again, 16,900 acres of water. Water gives you plenty of rodents, plenty of small animals. Well, people buy these little snakes and they go, oh, they're cute, let's feed them some mice. Well, these things grow to 10 to 15 to 20 feet, and they go, oh, it almost got out of its cage. If that thing gets out of its cage, it's going to kill us by hugging us to death. Oh, let's go throw it in the woods. Well, boas don't have any natural predators around here. So you got plenty of people with small cats and dogs living on the outskirts of this triangle. You got a smorgasbord of food growing.
Right. And it would make sense that people would release those kind of creatures into a wooded area like Bridgewater Triangle.
Correct, because they want to.
Right.
They don't want to kill the poor thing,
right.
So they put it out in the wild. They did that down the in Florida in the Everglades. They're destroying the Everglades. These people by look at that cute snake. Oh, it's getting too big. It's going to hurt the kids. Let's get rid of it. Oh, let's go throw it in the woods.
Sure. Years and years ago, Tom, in New York City, prior to restrictions of importing different animals, people would buy these very small crocodiles.
Yes.
6, 8, 10 inches long. Well, they'd keep them in bathtubs and feed them and what have you, and they grow so big they have to get rid of them, and they used to put them down the sewer.
Right.
They'd either release them into the sewer or flush them down the toilet, and they ended up in the sewer systems in New York. And because of the garbage and everything else they could eat down there, they were surviving and growing.
Right, and nobody outside of humans to keep them under control because there's no natural. They're in an unnatural habitat.
Yeah, no natural predators down there to take them on, so they survived for many years until the New York City had to actually take an effort forth to go down and capture and relocate a lot of them. I'm sure some of them, unfortunately, had to be killed. But so that went on in New York City for many years. So you can imagine what it was like in the wilderness to release these kind of creatures.
Right. And the other thing
Right, it's a lot easier.
Correct. And the other thing down there you have to watch out for, okay, while we're on this, before we continue on, just in case people at home going, I'm going down there to check this out. Be careful. There's also rattlesnakes down there you have to watch out for. Now, obviously, we have eastern rattlers. They're a lot tamer than their southern sisters, but if you step on one, you're going to get bit, and you better get to the hospital. You're not going to die right away like their southern sisters, because the venom isn't strong, but you better get some help immediately. And of course,
if you go back to the show last week when Jason Morse, the Bigfoot researcher, was talking, anytime that you hear a podcast like this, it certainly should, and I hope it does, pique your interest to go. But again, I think your point's very valid, Tom, that you have to be extremely aware of your environment. And if you're not an outdoorsman or woman and used to being in the outdoors and being able to protect yourself and so forth, these aren't trips you want to take by yourself.
No. I wouldn't even suggest going out in those woods by yourself, because Freetown and the Hockomock Swamp have had some, occult stuff go on in there, demonics. Yeah. You also had back in the 60s, 70s, you had the murders that took place down there, the Boston strippers that went on down there. They were finding strippers, dead in the woods. It's a great dumping area. So you definitely don't want to go in there by yourself.
Right, exactly.
Before we continue this, Bob, for our great listeners, and I'll mention this again, and tell them the website they can go sign up if they want to. I am planning a trip, and next week we will announce the date. I'm just waiting to hear how the weather is down there, how the quick mud is doing. But we will announce a date of an investigation, either Freetown or the Hockomock Swamp, coming up in April.
Okay, so if you're interested in attending that, Tom has done this in the past, and it's been a great, successful event. We've had great feedback on it. People really enjoy it. Gives you an opportunity to go into an area that you're fairly safe in with Tom's leadership. But if you're interested, send an email to the Paranormal, PARANORMALNH @yahoo.com, and I'll get the information to Tom, and we'll book you to go, because I'm sure, Tom, that you must have somewhat of a limited group going, correct?
Yeah, because we're all going to have to carpool down, because that's the cheapest way to go.
Yeah, and do you need special permission to get into that swamp, Tom?
Parts of it you do, parts of it you don't. Yeah. We're going in during the daytime, and these are all walking trails that I use that are open dawn to dusk.
Dawn to dusk, okay.
But obviously, if you come across a cemetery, you should get permission. Right. I will be notifying people down there that we will be doing this trip.
Yeah.
Because people do use the campsites, do use the walking trails all the time, too. They're open to the public.
Wow, okay. Now, you said campsites. Do they actually have campsites available down there?
They do on one side, but they're always booked, and they're only open in the summer, and it's closer to the forest than the swamp.
Oh, okay. Because this is really, as you open up the program, a pretty large area. 200 square miles is huge.
It's huge, yes. And
it's huge.
I mean, I've been researching this for years. My notes are incredible on this. I do talks on this. And usually when I do talks on this talk, we usually put a good crowd in the library when it's all said and done. Because there's a lot of things that go on down there. I mean, we're not even touched the outskirts of the triangle. I mean, we're not even there yet. I mean, you have Freetown State, and then, of course, you have 2 state hospitals that were down there. State hospitals bring people in with issues. People die in those places.
Right,
And when you have Taunton State Hospital and some of these abandoned hospital buildings, you're going to have some issues.
Right.
Sure,
because some of them were mentally challenged folks.
Correct.
To begin with, yeah.
Right, and like
so
I said,
you don't know what you don't know what demons they were managing.
No, you really don't, and it's really sad. But that's another reason why you have all this energy down there.
Right. So I don't know if anybody's ever asked you this question, and it just kind of popped into my mind. Again, we usually deal in one-dimensional paranormal activity: ghosts, Bigfoot, Dogman, which we're going to have a show on shortly. But how do all of these different paranormal events coincide with each other? For example, I was reading that the UFO sightings are really balls of light. So I'm questioning whether those are UFO sightings or some other kind of, paranormal activity other than UFOs. But one of the things I read was there are Bigfoot-like creatures. So I'm wondering how they all intersect with each other with ghosts and Bigfoots, large snakes, large birds. They all seem to be cohabitating together in this one area. And I wonder what draws them there. You said negative energy, which makes a lot of sense. Mm-hmm. But some of that, Bigfoot, for example, has never, I don't know that this is a good statement, but I don't know that's ever been tied to negative energy.
Correct.
So I wonder what brings, is it that Bigfoot can hide there, which is his MO or her MO, right? I mean, Bigfoot tends to go into very deep-wooded, untraveled, unpopulated areas. Mm-hmm. But again, how does it intersect with UFOs and ghosts?
Right. And, well, before I forget one thing, Bob, about UFOs, I believe it was 1983 or 82. Yeah. And this was all over BZ at the time because 2 reporters from BZ witnessed this. There were a UFO following President Reagan in Air Force One. They had to, I forgot the Air Force base. Which one was on the Cape? I believe they're all closed out, but there was one on the Cape.
Otis.
It
used to be Otis.
Otis, okay, thank you. They actually released fighter jets from Otis Air Force Base to intercept, and obviously by the time the Air Force got there, those things were long gone.
Yeah, sure.
So when you have, let me see if I get this right, what you just asked me. We're going to answer this one way or another. When you have Native American curse on the land, you have war blood from the bloodiest war in American history, where more people per capita died in this country than any other war ever fought. Okay?
Including the Civil War?
Including the Civil War. Wow. More men per capita died during the French. Wow. Now, that's a very loaded thing I just said. More men per capita. Remember that.
Yep, I got you.
So, when this area was settled in the 1600s, there weren't a lot of people living in town.
All right.
So if you have 40 people living in town and 25 of them get killed in a Native American raid or a war battle, that's a big portion. By the time the American Civil War shows up, you have cities and towns with 20 and 30,000 people living in them. Like Baltimore, Boston. I mean, Boston, not as big as today, but big. Probably 50 to 60,000 people in 1860. So if you have 2,000 people die, men, mostly at that time, there were some women that did fight in the Civil War too. The per capita numbers are going to be less. So just,
sure.
Just for our listeners at home that they understand what we're doing here.
Yeah,
So,
but being a historian as you are, and probably one of the best in New England, give our listeners just a quick overview of what that war was about.
The whole idea of the French-Indian War was really about expansion. You're going to hear a million different stories on this from a million different views, okay? Just to warn people. So early on, you had the English coming in, settling the area, and taking over the land. And, of course, that took land from the Native Americans that were here before us, before the English settlers and the French. And then you had the French that was up the Mississippi River into Canada. And then you had the English on what is called the East Coast today, right? Right up the coast, except for Florida and down in the deep south. But the Carolinas north, we'll say, even Georgia.
Right.
Okay. Florida came in later on. Right. So then they realized, there's money to be made here, not just in wood, but in pelts, meaning animal pelts.
Right.
Well, the natives would use those same pelts for food, shelter, if it was big enough, like bear, or keep warm. Well, the English wanted it, so that started a feud. And then the French wanted control of this area. So England and France started fighting, which turned out to be almost a 30-plus year war. England and France started fighting overseas, then in Canada, then it made it to the colonies. And then the Germans got involved. Everybody was getting involved, okay? So you had a war over here. The French had their friends of Native American allies, and the British had theirs. And they were just killing each other. It was a very bloody time. And a lot of Native Americans put curses on their land and their wampum because the colonists, whether French or English, it didn't matter, were digging up the bodies and stealing the wampum because it's worth money. So
the Indians, the American Indians that were here, they kind of divide up too, because some go with the French,
right, and some go with the English.
English, okay, I gotcha. Yeah.
So you have that blood being drawn. You have So the French and the English brought their religion, and this was about religion too. The Jesuits and the priests were coming over to try to modernize the Native American tribes into modern religion. Okay? But the natives had their own religion, and they believed in land-based stuff. Okay? Land-based religion. So when you have all that going on, so now the land has got native blood, English blood, French blood, and, of course, their beliefs are laying in the ground, right?
Right.
And then you have cult stuff that starts going on. And I know 1998 pops up all over the Internet. I hate to tell you, cult stuff was going on way back in the day, too. Okay?
Right.
So you have that stuff going on. You have an area that's very mystique, that carries a lot of animals, that like a Bigfoot, Birdman, these Thunderbird sightings, there's room for them to live out there. That's all virgin territory. Not only that, there are trails through the swamp today, but back in the 16, 17, and 1800s, there weren't. And it's not an easy place to walk.
Right.
You can die from just about anything. You had rattlesnake bites that could kill you. I mean, today it's a little different. Get to the hospital, they're probably going to save you. Okay?
Right.
But you had quick mud. You had animals in there. So it just sets up for the perfect storm.
Yeah, I think the other thing that people have to keep in mind is that the American Indian culture was really worshipped land and only used animals for survival. I mean, they didn't hunt and kill for the sake of killing. They hunted and killed, like you said, to feed themselves and to, dress themselves and keep warm, where a lot of people didn't respect their culture towards animals. I mean, the buffalo was certainly an animal that they thought very highly of, and never thinned a herd to extinction. That was the American soldier that did that, or the cowboys that did that, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course,
so there was
you have beliefs, okay?
Right.
Which gets into one of my favorite laws.
Yeah.
Okay. We all have watched Skinwalker Ranch, right?
Yep. One of my favorite.
Yeah, it's a favorite of many. So you have skinwalkers at that ranch.
Right.
But here at the Bridgewater Triangle, you have Pudgewuckies.
Wow. Okay.
Pudgewuckies are in Algonquin folklore. The local Wampanoag people believed and considered that these little people to be dangerous tricksters. There's stories where they would lie you out in the woods and then you'd end up dead.
Wow.
At the cliffs where people have jumped in, they said these little strange creatures were calling them and jumping in, and they jumped to their death because when you go cliff going, let's face it, I mean, you don't hit the water right, you're gone.
All right. So do these type of creatures, do you think they still exist in this triangle?
They more than just exist in this triangle.
Wow.
They've also been sighted at Baxter State Park up in Maine.
Really?
Yep. And then years and years and years ago, I got called to this old school in Amesbury, which is a house now. That's all I'm going to say. Okay?
Okay.
I got called to this house because the lady picked up a Fender guitar out of the trash and was having all sorts of issues with it. I own the Fender guitar. We took it out of the house. It was loaded with spirits. But out in the yard, I went to go check something because something felt weird when I pulled in. There was an old-fashioned portal there, a door to the other side.
Wow.
And we love portals, don't we, Bob?
Yeah, we like portals. We don't go through them, but we like them.
Yeah. That's a good sarcastic thing here.
Yeah, there you go.
So we went checking this thing out, and what's hiding around the tree when I got there? This little pointy-eared, red-eyed, going, oh, this is interesting.
So describe that to us. How tall was it, Tom?
Oh, it was probably close to 4 feet or under.
Okay, so under 4 feet.
Under 4 feet.
Similar to the Irish leprechaun.
Yeah, pointy ears, nice, beautiful claws. You don't want to look at those too well.
Yeah.
And I'm saying to myself, wow, what is this? So all of a sudden, the way it was acting, I'm thinking to myself, no, there cannot be one here. No. Because I've never known them to come into, this was in Amesbury, I'll tell you the town. Pretty far from the Hockomock Swamp, if you ask me.
Yeah, well, if they're up in Maine, that's a good distance also.
And a pretty good damn distance, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we ended up moving it back. Now, what is a Pudgewuckie? Pudgewuckies, to most people, are the devil's part of the devil's army. Okay, and supposedly King Philip used them during King Philip's War, and the colonial militia routed them into a field and burnt the field and killed every one of them. That's how the story is told. I'm not a firm believer of that story. I'll be honest with you.
Yeah, well, it's folklore.
It's good New England folklore. We have plenty of folklore in New England. Plenty
Sure.
of folklore.
And there's a little bit of truth to everything.
Right.
Right.
But, I don't know where it is. They have been seen in Delaware, Prince Edward Islands,
Wow.
Indiana, and Massachusetts.
Really a very odd migration pattern.
Well, also, too, that's somewhere where the Wampanoag natives would have traveled in. So it's like a skinwalker. It's in their folklore and culture. Correct.
Yeah. Yeah, so they would have migrated with them.
Correct. In Prince Edward Island, there were a lot of the natives from this area ended up there.
Okay. So that explains the migration pattern.
Yeah.
Right.
But, these things you have to watch out for.
Oh, sure. Now, Tom, I was, and again, I defer to you because you're the expert, but Wampanoag Belt Curse.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with that?
Native Americans, to protect their stuff, okay, their artifacts, would pretty much curse, and it didn't matter if they were. Let me just check my file, see if I have any on that as I talk. They would use different things to protect their stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. And now they always say, what'd you call it? Wampanoag what?
Well, the story I read was there was a Wampanoag chief.
Yeah.
That was given a belt from, I think, King Philip, whichever side
Correct.
this Wampanoag chief was on. And he lost that belt during a battle in the swamp. And it's kind of, over decades, has become the Wampanoag Belt Curse. Because they claim that he and his ancestors are searching for the belt.
I have heard that. And with my knowledge of local lore and stuff, which, I'm no doctor in this thing, so. But, when you read about, and it doesn't matter what it is, okay?
Right.
Let's try to stay non-political with this, okay? It's going to be real hard, but we have to try to get out of the area to sometimes explain things to people, okay?
Right.
So,
sure.
Out in the Midwest, somebody wants to start drilling for oil, okay?
Yeah.
It's all over the news. Not mentioning names. Okay, now, of course, people are going, no, that's over Native American land. And they are correct. Okay.
All right.
Now, I don't know what they used out there. But when Native Americans buried their own to protect the Wampanoag belts and other jewelry that grave robbers would do, they would bury their loved ones with a curse. Now, let me that word is used very loosely there. Curse. Okay. They didn't go, hi-yay, and put this curse, anybody digs the land, you die. Nope.
Yeah.
So, the main natives use this thing called red ochre to bury with their loved ones. Red ochre gets into your water supply, you'll be fine. But if red ochre gets into your nose, it could cause cancer.
Wow.
Hence, the curse of the land.
Right.
Native Americans buried their loved ones with high respect and poison to the land.
Right.
Now, if it gets into your water supply, you'll be fine. It's not that type of poison. it's airborne. So you start digging into the pipeline out there, and you start digging through Native American sites where this powder or whatever was used to put down, and that gets into your system, it could cause cancer or other things.
Sure. I it's kind of similar, Tom, going way back to how the Egyptians buried their kings and queens in tombs that were allegedly, at least, cursed for nobody to bother that body because they believed that they went to an afterlife, right? And I think probably the most popular one is King Tut.
Right.
A fairly young king died at 19 years of age, became king at 9, and he was buried with a curse attached to him. And that curse is through history of people that have entered that have become sick and died and so forth and so on. So I think it kind of follows the same pattern as the American Indian.
Correct.
Right? Because they were abused, and what we did to the American Indians in this country was an atrocity.
I agree.
With the way we stole their land and ruined their culture and just lied to them and everything else. But again, that's the politics of it. But I could see them saying we need to protect our because they had very, very much respect for spirits.
Correct.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like the Egyptians, they really believed spirits went on to the afterlife.
Right. Native Americans were known once they killed a deer or a bear for dinner, they would pray to the bear gods and thanking the bear gods for their dinner that night. Correct.
Absolutely. And they used almost every part of every animal that they ever killed, whether they were the antlers of a deer that they would use for weapons and spears and so forth Fishing. And so on.
Right.
Or the skins or the furs or, the meat or whatever it was. They used almost all of the animal to survive with.
Right.
And this is why, the American buffalo roamed the plains in abundancy back then, because they weren't thinning herds out. They were just taking, like I said earlier, they were just taking animals for food and shelter.
Correct.
But it's interesting, Tom, to think about the connection to the spirit in the afterlife, and now go back to Bridgewater again, where so many Wampanoags lost their lives. It really does kind of justify why that place would be so haunted with different types of paranormal activity.
Correct. And not only that, when the English settled there, English brought their own disease that wiped out Native Americans, but Native Americans had diseases that wiped out English too. And you don't know, there's certain things you can eat in a swamp that will keep you alive for 100 years. There are certain things in the swamp that will kill you in 10 seconds flat if you eat it. Sure. And that's what happened there, too. You had a lot of people eating things they weren't supposed to be eating because they weren't used to our native plants and dying, so the land's cursed. Is it really cursed? The answer is probably no. But due to the amount of death and going on down there, that's how most English people would have thought in the 1700s and even the 1800s.
Sure. Well, when they came over, on the Mayflower, they brought disease with them. And if you look at the place down in Virginia, that a whole colony of Indians were just wiped out. They never knew what happened to them because they would bring disease that the American Indians had no buildup against.
Correct.
So they would get this, they would get pneumonia and die. They would get disease and die, but because they didn't know, how to protect themselves against it, it was so new to them.
Now, how bad is this area, paranormal-wise? We talked about a little bit about Bigfoot, but we had a Bigfoot expert on last week. We talked about Birdman. We talked about some ghosts down there. We talked about the occult down there. We talked about a lot of things, right?
Right.
But guess what we didn't talk about down there?
I can't imagine.
All right, so we got the Bigfoot, right?
Yeah.
Back, and the date is blowing my mind right now. It was sometime in the 70s. At a park, 1970s, correct.
Yeah.
At a park in Lakeville, Massachusetts, in the Bridgewater Triangle. Early on a Saturday morning, people were out in the park, and they witnessed zombies.
Zombies.
Yep.
And zombies are people that have passed away.
Correct.
And have come back to full body life.
Correct. Or there's actually a bug in South America. If you get bit by it, it'll give you zombie-like symptoms. But there were zombies sighted in a park.
In 1970.
Yeah, in the 1970s, correct. They actually disappeared.
Oh. So this area, Tom, just has multiple layers of paranormal. I mean, is Dogman ever been identified in the Bridgewater Triangle?
There's been so many creatures sighted down there. Dogman, I'm not sure of.
Yeah, could very well be a byproduct of one of these creatures.
Right, exactly. Let me see if there's anything in my files on Dogman.
Oh, zombies. That's.
I found the zombie thing very interesting.
Tom, while you're looking at that, let me ask you this question: has there ever been what I would define as an expedition into the Bridgewater Triangle where a team has gone in there and spent a week, 2 weeks, staying there, camping there, researching there? Has that ever been done?
I'm not sure about camping. Okay. I'm not sure.
I meant camping in that somebody would set up a research facility, tents, and so forth.
No, I don't think so. I mean, we attempted to do that one time down there and just stay the afternoon, but people wanted to continue to walk. We got out near the power lines. We went down Freetown State Forest and went out to the power line trails.
Right.
And that area, I had just been reported a couple days before that to me from law enforcement sources down there that there was Bigfoot sightings down there. We actually, every time we called out King Philip, the wind would howl out of nowhere.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes. The dogman or dog-like creature has been purported in the Bridgewater Triangle.
Wow. So that just about completes the whole cycle of the paranormal. I mean, almost every aspect of paranormal that you and I have dealt with in 20 years seems to be somehow related to that area down there.
Correct. Which is really interesting.
It's too bad. I don't have the courage to do it. I'd let our listeners know right now I'm a big baby. I'm a coward. But it's too bad that an expedition could not be put together. You would have to have all kinds of, different disciplines involved, obviously researchers and so forth, with some sort of a security. But it's too bad an expedition couldn't be put together to spend 2 weeks in the Bridgewater Triangle investigating a lot of these things.
Well, it could be. It's just getting the permission to do the overnight stuff. The daytime stuff, you could do it, which means you
the daytime. But I'm saying if you wanted to take a team of 10 or 12 people in there to stay for 2 weeks, I think the problem would be I defer to you. I certainly don't have the expertise to do it, or the outdoorsman skills to do it. I think that would take it would be like an expedition to Antarctica, right? I mean,
Right.
you don't just down snow boots and gloves and go to Antarctica for 2 weeks, right?
No,
Yeah.
but
it's a whole
right.
expedition.
But Freetown, you could. I mean, you could. It would take what it would take is an exorbitant amount of resources, and I'm not going to put it together over the air, Bob, because what I don't want is somebody sitting at home going, "Oh, we got the financial will to do this. Let's do what he just said to do it." Then they go down there and they run into a whole bunch of problems.
Yeah, I would
there is a
comment
way
on
of doing it.
If somebody listening to this podcast has the financial resources to do it, they should call you or send us an email.
Right.
Because if there is a funding group out there that would be interested in funding an expedition put on by professionals, I'd be very interested in talking to them about that.
Right. And Bob, there is room for you, actually, because you're very good at a lot of things. I mean, some of those trails are real easy to walk, number one. Number two, you could always run base camp and organize base camp, which is the toughest thing to do.
Yeah. As long as base camp is right next to a Holiday Inn with showers and beds.
Right. But it can be done. I know. It can be done. I know you can.
Well, it's interesting. And again, I think if you have that kind of financial funding and resources, then give us a call. I mean, I think that you and your team have done so much in New England. And I don't think an expedition is Star Wars, if you will. I don't think that.
No.
I think it takes a lot of funding. I think it takes a security. And I think the biggest thing is it takes knowledge of outdoorsmanship. I mean, you have to be in shape for that. You have to be ready for that. And you have to have the correct gear for that.
Correct. So, I mean...
But it would be interesting to see if we get anybody that's interested in funding an expedition.
Right. Same with the Ossipee Triangle. I've done a lot of work out there, and I know what it takes to go out there. That will be a lot harder because you got mountain terrain. At least here it's all flat. The highest you got is, a small graded hill. There are hills bigger in Haverhill than there are in the Freetown State Forest and the Hockomock Swamp.
Right. But on a smaller scale, don't you have the Wyndham Triangle?
You have the Salem-Wyndham-Derry Triangle, yes, that I named.
Yep.
Sandown Triangle.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they're out there.
They're out there. Yeah, you certainly have got, some smaller models to look at.
That is correct.
So it's interesting.
No, it is really interesting what goes on.
Yeah, well, it's one of the New England stories that really you don't hear a lot of, but you should hear more of. You know what I'm trying to say?
Mm-hmm.
New England, when you look at New England, we're really a very unique area between the witches and all of the paranormal activity, and certainly UFO activity.
And before I forget, on UFO activity, I know people who have been abducted out of the Bridgewater Triangle.
Really?
So you have that, too.
Now, the people who were abducted, Tom, they were abducted and returned, or abducted and never...
Abducted and returned.
And returned. So they can tell that story where they were abducted from.
Yeah, I've had
Are there many of those abduction stories out there?
Yeah, they've all been on Monsters and Mysteries of America. If you
we need to get a couple of them on the show.
Right.
I'd love to interview somebody like that.
It is interesting what goes on in those woods. Dark woods. Yeah. I mean, it's been called everything under the sun. I mean, this is an area that you can honestly say has everything in the paranormal. Everything.
Yeah. I mean, it covers it all, right? We haven't missed too many things, really.
Birdman, Thunderbird, Dogman, Bigfoot, big snakes, big cats. Well, ghosts we didn't even touch upon. I mean, we touched upon the spirits, but we didn't even touch upon the hundreds and hundreds of locations inside the triangle that have paranormal activity in there.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, K2 readings and voice recordings and
stuff like that. You have UFO sightings all over that area. Abductees.
Which kind of segues into our closing comments tonight. Through Essex County Ghost Project, we're an arm of that, as you well know. You run it, and Skywatchers New England is about to launch its, I'm going to say, first official season. I think we got off the ground last year, but it was kind of a test case. We're looking for recruits, looking for new people, new blood to join, new ideas. We like people coming in that can share new ideas and new thoughts. What we're really looking for is somebody that wants to be in both the paranormal world and the UFO UAP world, along with night sky vision. So it's really a three-pronged strategy I think we have, that if you want to be in the paranormal and ghosts and so forth, you want to also are interested in UFO, UAP research, that's great. If you're just interested in night sky viewing, we're going to have 4 major events this year. For the night sky part of it, Tom and I have already started planning some great events for Essex County Ghost Project. Some of them have never been done before. We're not going to reveal that yet for lots of reasons, but we will reveal it in the near future, and you're going to be excited about it. You're going to want to be a part of it because it's never been done before. And certainly, as a side conversation, that's what we're talking about, expedition. So maybe we do an expedition to the Salem-Wyndham triangle to start with. But there's going to be a lot of exciting things coming up, and they're going to hit fast and furious here in the next 2-3 months.
Correct.
So Tom and I are real excited about the launch, and we encourage you to join this group. There's no real long-term commitments. There's no money commitments for you to join.
Nope.
If you say, well, I'd love to, but I don't know how to do it, we'll train you, okay? It's not an expensive thing to get into, so it's not like I don't have the money. It's such an interesting aspect as a hobby, I think. So, again, send your request to paranormalnh@yahoo.com, and I'll coordinate with Tom, and we'll get you into a group. We'll get you in both groups if you want, or just come out and watch the night sky with us.
Right, exactly. I mean, and it's fun. It's exciting, and we're there to help all our clients when we have them, and that's what we do. I mean, we'll have cases. We've had, Essex County has actually had a couple cases where there was UFO and paranormal investigation at the same time going on.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there's at least some strategies that suggest maybe they're one and the same. We don't know that yet.
No, we don't.
I think the other thing that should be noted here for people that are listening that have homes that may have activity in them, or buildings, or fundraising. If you'd like to do a fundraiser, we're very interested in talking to you about doing fundraisers for you. We don't make any money on this.
Nope.
Our folks don't get paid. We don't get paid. Whatever fundraising we do for you. So you get 100% of that fundraising. You provide the venue. You provide the support. We provide the people. So, open up the dialogue with us. That's what we're saying. Tom and I are encouraging you to send us requests. There isn't any request that we won't look at seriously and evaluate. So,
and Bob, big breaking news here. I started this a couple years ago, but I never really pushed it. But last year it grew, and this year it's growing exponentially. I'm almost booked through the month of October for this. If you run an assisted living or a senior center or something along that lines, we can come in and do the history of the paranormal. We won't talk about the ghost at the nursing home because we respect the people who live there. And we get those questions asked all the time, and we know how to kindly move to the next. But we'll talk about haunted cemeteries. I can bring the Bridgewater Triangle talk right to you. 101 call 099 101 basic paranormal, where we bring equipment and everybody enjoys all the lights going off, and we make the lights go off and show how the equipment works. We do all of that too. So let us know.
I think it pays us to give Bill, an attaboy. He's probably one of the best equipment guys in New England today. He knows more about equipment. He knows more how to use equipment, what it does for you. We're very fortunate to have him on the team, and he's a huge part of Essex County Ghost Project.
He knows he has more equipment than, we're going to use an old cliche here, he has more equipment than Jimmy Carter's got pills, and he knows how to use it all. Every time I work with Bill, I learn something new about the equipment.
I get you. I do. Yeah, he's absolutely right. So all good news on this end. Stay tuned.
Yes. Well, Bob, we've come to the end of another great show, so I want to thank you tonight. Yeah. This was fun.
Oh, my pleasure.
Next week, we'll have another guest back on, and we'll see you soon. I'm heading back to my crypt to relax and enjoy the evening. Good night, everybody, and we'll see you in the paranormal.
Good night, everybody.